Tēnā koutou katoa. Welcome everybody to this briefing on the environmental aspects of our business. Welcome to councillors, welcome to staff, welcome to whoever is online. I know Matt is online, there may be others as well as we work our way through, but good to have you all here. Essentially, we're going to work our way through in this environmental delivery space, and we've got Libby here first up, and I'm just going to hand over to Libby unless Joe wants to say anything else as an intro.
We've got a series of presentations on some key pieces of work that are part of the environmental delivery group. So Libby's going to start us off, I think, with 3 presentations and 3 topics. So we'll take questions as we go. So the first presentation that we've got is on our large scale environmental fund, but I'll let Libby introduce herself and take it from there.
Thank you. Morena koutou, ko Libby Caldwell Tokalonga. So I'm Libby and I'm the manager of the environmental implementation team. So I've got 3 topics to cover today. The first is the large scale environment fund, which you can see on the screen. Then we have the integrated catchment management program, and then the review of the regional pest management plan. So we'll start with the large scale environment fund. So through the long-term plan, council allocated $2 million towards large-scale environmental projects. The LTP detailed for this to be funded by an Otago-wide rate from July 2025. And following the adoption of this through council, there have been a series of workshops and papers presented to the previous council to provide options and details around this new fund, what it would look to achieve and how it would be established. Through the annual plan process in 2025, it was decided that the fund was to be funded via reserves for the 2025-26 year.
No,
Yes, hello.
you did say during, yes. Which reserve?
I think you just, sorry, I think you're using the microphone thing, so we're
Sorry, which reserve?
I think it's just general
I
reserve.
think it's just general reserve.
So in April 2025, council endorsed the principles of the fund to be used to define what large scale is. And in June 2025, council endorsed that a prioritised funding model through a registration of interest, then followed by a request for proposal process or direct engagement, would be used to implement the fund. In alignment with catchment action plan implementation, where appropriate, was also endorsed. At the June council meeting, the eligibility criteria for the fund was also endorsed. So for the key principles of the fund, so while large scale hasn't been defined in exact terms, council endorsed these 3 key principles in April 2025 that guide how the fund delivers large scale outcomes. These principles ensure that the projects we support are meaningful, enduring and well aligned with ORC's purpose. And they are, so the first one is that the funding must create intergenerational impact, delivering benefits that last well beyond the life of the project. Second one, ORC provides leadership at the regional systems level, while local leadership and on the ground actions are driven by communities. And the third one, all projects must align with ORC's organisational strategy and strategic direction. So these principles give the fund its foundation, ensuring strong partnerships, long-term thinking and alignment to our wider environmental goals. So there are 8 eligibility criteria in place for the fund, and not all of them need to be met, but they provide a framework for the initial assessment of applications. Detailed assessment criteria is still to be approved by council. The eligibility criteria include alignment to organisational priorities, ecological scale, value for investment, and the organisation's capability and stability. There's also a strong emphasis on being community-led, having a collaborative approach and demonstrating a commitment to partnership with ORC and long-term sustainability. Essentially, this ensures that projects we fund are well aligned with ORC priorities and deliver genuine lasting impacts across the region. The funding model endorsed is designed to be transparent and fair while also allowing flexibility. It follows a multi-stage procurement process, starting with a registration of interest and then followed by a request for proposal or direct engagement where appropriate. This aligns with Council's strategic objectives and links to the implementation of catchment action plans where appropriate. Councillors will have a key role in decision-making for this fund, supported by an evaluation panel. It can allow for one funding round per long-term plan cycle and includes rights of renewal and stop-go clauses in agreements, ensuring accountability and performance alongside continuity of funding for projects which are delivering the desired outcomes.
So can I, sorry, the question as well, the third last one allows for single funding round in alignment with the LTP, but it could be an annual as well, but that doesn't limit it to once. Thank you for checking.
So the next steps for the fund is about putting the framework into practice. So early in 2026, a paper will be brought to council seeking endorsement of the administration process timeline, councillor representation on the assessment panel, and a communications and engagement plan. This will help ensure clarity and consistency as we move into implementing the fund. So that is the end for the large scale environment fund. So if there's any questions on that.
Thank you. I think I understand the background and the importance of having something that ensures continuity of funding for groups and that more large scale ambitious program. I'm just wondering if I can take it back a couple of steps to just really get my head around the Eco Fund and how that's operated. Part of my mandate coming into this election was really dialing into the details of how the Eco Fund is managed. And then I think if councillors are, obviously the council has approved going down this pathway, that's all good. Just making sure that the mechanisms of how the Eco Fund works is either transferred over to the large scale fund or adjusted so that we're getting very much clarity of outcomes for ratepayers' money in that fund. So just with the Eco Fund, are you able to, I guess firstly, just run me through how we measure outcomes with the Eco Fund?
So in terms of Eco Fund, we have a system where we provide groups who are successful, which is endorsed by council. They have a funding agreement where, as part of that funding agreement, they will have clauses within that where they have specific reports or these milestones along the way that they need to achieve, and our team follow up on those and ensure that those are met. Holistically, in terms of outcomes overall, so that's at an individual project level, then yes, we're monitoring that and ensuring that that information is received. We need to do a bit more work on how we look at outcomes holistically for the program, and that we'll be working with through our integrated catchment management program and with the science team, as well as with the strategy team. There's a piece of work occurring at the moment around how we measure outcomes long term. So that is in development. At the moment, we've been looking more at the outputs of what the projects deliver. So that larger piece of work is underway. It's just not quite finalised yet.
How do we, what software do we have that tracks community funding?
So we have introduced I think it was last financial year, we introduced a new piece of software. It's called Inquire. And it's a software that is used by some other regional councils or district councils across the country as well. And that some of our councillors who were on the panel last year used that to undertake their scoring as well. So all of the scoring that we do for each application we receive is undertaken through Inquire, and the customer or the group that has the funding agreement with us use that to input their information, so that it's all tracked in that system.
Thank you. So that's for the application phase, and you've mentioned obviously that they have to have reporting. They've got to report back, and there's milestones. Do they report back through that software system?
Yes.
So that closes the loop on that, which is awesome.
Yep.
When it comes to pulling out any data or metrics from the projects themselves, what is the pathway to ensure that ORC is getting as much relevant? Obviously, some of the data that these groups, firstly, some groups won't be able to produce much in the way of data just due to their capacity and size. But those that can, how do we ensure that there's a clear line of communication that we would like some data back from your project? Is there an expectation there, or is that not part of that grant?
Generally, it's probably not part of the grant, but we have really good relationships with those groups in terms of our catchment advisor team and other staff across the organisation that can connect back and get information for them as their projects start. So there might be an example of that could be that there's a planting project and we fund that for 1 year, but we know that longer term over the 10-year period, there might be some plants that are lost, or they might not be. And so we continually go back and keep those relationships with those groups to ensure that those projects are successful and give them advice where we can.
I'm not planning on chewing up too much time, but does the ORC set sort of themes or projects or bodies of work that they might like participation in from the community groups, or is that the sort of approach that's envisaged with the large scale fund? Say, like ORC will say from your scientists and people on the ground, say, we want to improve the estuary to harbour connection or a predator pathway. Yeah. Is that driven from council, or for the large scale funds, do you think that will come from the groups themselves?
So for the large scale fund, I envisage that it will come from the groups themselves around what's important to them and what they'd like to see achieved. I think as staff, we can provide advice around what we also are finding through our research and science as well. For the Eco Fund, we have specific topics that so there's a general Eco Fund, which is quite a broad range of whatever people want to apply for. There's specific criteria listed as well, but we have categories that sit underneath alongside the general fund as well. So this year, I'm racking my brains, but at the we have a scaling up for biodiversity fund that sits in the Eco Fund. We also have a pest planting after pest control fund. We have a hill country erosion fund, and there's a couple more others of topics we have as well.
So for me, that seems smart to compartmentalise that into things that the council needs delivery on. A key concern of mine is that with the large scale fund, and I know that we're expect the paper in early 2026 might answer quite a few of these questions, but it does seem that an organisation our size, with the scale of science capability that we have, that we are probably it could be said that with this large scale fund, we ought to be directing those projects and probably driving those internally more than saying to the community, what are you working on? We want to, say for example, because Matt was heavily involved with this and he's been really helpful explaining it to me, Southern Lake Sanctuary, we want to support this big project. That's great, but I'm very concerned about closing the loop between the money we're giving out and how those projects feed into our long-term strategic direction. it just seems from the frequency report and just seems that there might be a bit of a gap that needs to be filled on the framework itself. And that's just a concern that I'm just going to signpost now, because I don't want to, you know, there's going to be a lot of work going into this, I can imagine, because it's an awesome undertaking, but we need to make sure that we're not just repeating the eco fund, because if that's the case, that's fine. Scale up the eco fund. I think the large scale one is an amazing opportunity to get a very good system going here that's robust, that we can use to validate to our ratepayers in our communities why we do what we do and how we do it. And I think there needs to be a great deal of caution around what that's going to look like. So I'm just signposting that.
And yeah, and really good for the team to hear that, and the intent is for it to be separate to Eco Fund, and really to give effect to our, in terms of RC's strategic directions, and where we do see there being some opportunities, but also to enable the community. So it is to find that sweet spot between those 2 points that you have raised. So in developing that framework, absolutely we'll ensure that we cover those topics off in that future paper that's coming back to you all.
I just think, you know, even along the lines of the fast track process, no matter what people think about that, it's areas putting forward big projects, and then a collection of stakeholders contributing to financing that project. So as you say, finding the sweet spot, the eco funds does excellent work. I do think that there's work to be done in the reporting of that and streamlining that system for staff and the applicants. It sounds like a terribly intense thing to be doing. So finding efficiencies in the eco fund and taking those learnings into what is going to be quite a different fund.
Yes, yeah, thank you.
I think the key thing to note, on this is catchment action planning is linked to the large scale funding, so that there's a huge process that goes into prioritising what the key issues are in that catchment, that involves science, that involves all the community groups, that involves multi-organisations, but particularly us as well, and building that platform as well, DIS as well, so you can see the issues, you can see where to direct the funding, and the community can see that, because it's community led. We're not going to get the action we need if we do it alone. So we have to have communities with us, and they have to be able to identify what the key issues are. That catchment action planning's where it integrates. And we haven't got all of that done yet, but we have in some catchments been working towards that. Sorry, Matt, you've got your hand up and you can talk way better about how that works too, so I'll be quiet, but that's the thing.
Thanks, Richard. I think empowering the community is probably one of the main planks that we've discussed previously about the importance of, whether it's empowering them with the knowledge, the science, empowering them with the resource, whether it's financial or other, is the key, so we get the best bang for our bucks. But yeah, I hear you. You know, that's a lot of good points, but we'll go to Matt online. With you, Matt.
Yeah, thanks for those points. Yeah, look, I think there's two aspects to the contribution, and thanks, Libby, for explaining what you're up to. It's a really good chance, I think, for ORC to show leadership in the space. So absolutely saying, hey, these are our priorities, and having those outlined at a spatial and conservation type of work approach. So that would be really handy for applicants to be aware of what's going on. Your reporting inquiry, I've worked with that with Jobs for Nature. That was really good. One opportunity in there when you are filling it together, make sure there's an opportunity to add in other work that's been produced by the entity, not just the stuff that's funded through the ORC, because I think it'd be a really good picture to demonstrate what it helps unlock. You know, from a large scale fund, for an organisation that's working at scale, they'll be sourcing money from other places, and it's not about ORC stealing the credit. Attribution theft is the last thing we want to be found guilty of, but I think it does point to the scale of the operation, because if you tie down the reporting solely to the money that's coming just from ORC, yes, we need to see that internally, but I think you also want to see what it creates. So hopefully Inquire can do that, and I know there's some good reporting that comes out of Inquire, so I think it's a really good way to do it. And I like your reference to having ORC field staff connected with the projects when they're out there, because I think that that's a really good way to maintain that relationship in terms of developing best practice. And yeah, if you're after any ideas or would like to see anything that I went through in my experience with Southern Lake Sanctuary in terms of the application to DOC, the systems, I'm sure you've done due diligence on that Inquire system as well as the DOC Community Fund, but there's plenty of really good systems out there that have it's reasonably demanding to get in the place in the first, to get the funding sorted and the agreement done in the first place, but don't make the reporting of stuff too onerous, because you end up with too many people sitting at computers writing reports and not enough people out there doing the mahi that actually makes a difference. So again, get that balance point right would be the thing I'll be looking for when we see it in February. But yeah, thanks very much for everything you've done putting this together. And yes, how it hooks in with the catchment management plans will be fascinating as well. The Upper Lakes one, I think, has unlocked some relationships up there. So it could be a one where there's a group of people could actually apply from a spatial plan idea from this part of the world, or it might be a sort of a sector specific application, or both comes through, I'm sure. Anyway, thank you.
Thanks, Matt. Kate, then Gary.
I thank you. Look, just following up, I think from Chanel's point, it's a question. I think I've read that Greater Wellington have, when they developed the predator free and they started at Miramar and other parts, they've actually got I think a 3, 5 and 10 and 20-year plan, so that they keep on, they've got those large scale projects, but they know where the next tranche is, which is perhaps a shortcoming in the way Otago's done it, only because they're separate groups, but we've never worked out what the next stage is from predator free Dunedin and Southern Lake Sanctuary and what that might look like moving across Otago. So I think it's the role that we have might be that bigger picture planning and coordination in order to get the best out of those plans. Yeah.
Thanks, Kate. Gary.
Thank you. Is general rates funded? Correct.
Yes, for this year.
And we are gathering the rates, so it's been charged to the ratepayers this year.
Sorry, yeah, so it's reserve funded for this year, and the proposal is in the next annual plan for it to be general rate funded, but obviously recognising that we are going to be going into an annual plan process. And Nick's got, okay, no, even I'm wrong, okay, that
It'll be catchment management rate funded.
is right.
So the environmental implementation in that area is funded through the catchment management rate. So not general rate, but last year when it was smaller, and this year the 2 million is reserve funded. And then when it does go to rate funding, it'll be catchment management.
So we will gather the funds in the next financial year and repay the reserve in the previous financial year. Is that correct?
No,
Or are we gathering the funds this financial year?
no, we haven't rated anything for the large scale environment fund yet. So the current year we're in, 25-26, the 2 million is going to be reserve funded from the additional surpluses that ended up that we got from last year. Yep. So when the annual plan got set, the view was that to keep the rates rise down, that it would be reserve funded, and it wasn't actually, the council didn't actually stipulate where that reserve fund would be from at that point. But then when we got to year end, we ended up with the additional surpluses that we had been forecasting. So we'd just be looking to utilise $2 million of that, which is effectively general reserve funding for this year. Yeah, but we haven't rated anything, and going into year 3, the LTP plan was that, well, year 2 and year 3 would have been rate funded. Year 2's now reserve funded, and year 3 still to be determined how it'll be funded. But if it was rates, the rate that we would use and the rate we had factored into the LTP was the catchment management rate.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you both. Alan?
Thanks. The establishment of this new fund, I think will certainly affect the space that the Eco Fund is operating in. And when we see how the new fund lands, and we're still waiting for that, I think it would be very worthwhile having that review of the Eco Fund, and I think we've probably signalled that, just to make sure that they aren't sort of competing. But my view of them is that they're fulfilling actually relatively different functions, even though there's the environmental benefits from all of them.
Thanks, Alan.
Sorry, and just one last thing, I think in reviewing the documents, I think obviously everyone's landed on a really good position, especially in terms of pursuing a certain funding model. I would suggest that perhaps aligning with the catchment action plans might be a step for, say, in 2 years, perhaps that it might be a suggestion to focus on your core model that you've decided on, and then try to align it as the catchment action plans develop, because right now it seems to try to conflate two things, and one isn't quite there, but it's ripe for development over. That's just a suggestion that we could perhaps look at. Yeah.
Yeah, and it is where that's arrived to, so it is in that criteria, but they don't have to meet all of them, so it does recognise that we're still on that journey with those catchment action plans, yeah.
Because there was an equity issue there that I.
Yeah, it was, and that was picked up in around this table and guidance was provided.
Awesome.
Thank you both. Any more queries, questions at this point? We're back in your hands, Libby.
Right, thank you. So moving now into the integrated catchment management part of the presentation. So ORC's level of service in the long-term plan is to develop and maintain an ICM program that aligns with national directions and supports sustainable environmental management. Each year, the goal is to bring one catchment action plan to council for approval by June 30. And to date, council have approved the development of 3 catchment action plans. 2 catchment action plans have been endorsed by council, and that is in the Catlins and the Upper Lakes areas. And work has commenced on the development of the CAP for the Taieri. So what is ICM? Integrated catchment management is a holistic process for understanding and managing the whole ecosystem within a catchment. It uses the catchment as a geographic boundary and integrates environmental, social, cultural, economic aspects. It combines effort across agencies, mana whenua, and communities to achieve shared goals. It's grounded in knowledge, community input, and strong partnerships. Essentially, it provides a structured, collaborative way to plan and act for environmental outcomes at the catchment scale. So at present, ORC's ICM program includes the Catlins and the Upper Lakes CAPs, which have been endorsed, and work on the Taieri CAP is underway. We've developed catchment action plan documents, brochures, and online interactive content through a GIS hub that gives access to data and mapping. The program uses the Open Standards for Conservation as a flexible planning framework. While FMU so freshwater management unit boundaries are a starting point, not every CAP follows these exactly, and we work with the community to define the boundary that they connect with the most. The approach is adaptive, accountable, focused, and based on the best available knowledge, with local knowledge and collaboration at its heart. CAPs are developed through establishing a group of approximately 20 representatives, which include mana whenua, community members, and other key stakeholders for the area. Once these groups are formed, ORC staff support building relationships, and we host 4 to 6 workshops to define and develop the content of the CAPs, while there is also public surveys and feedback loops provided throughout the development process. Our ICM approach is guided by several key principles. These include being adaptive and accountable, using best available knowledge, and maintaining a focus on collaboration and local knowledge. The ICM program is primarily non-regulatory, while complementing and reinforcing our broader regulatory approach. We focus on working alongside communities to support positive action. This helps to build strong partnerships and trust. Ultimately, these principles help ensure that ICM at ORC is practical, effective, and genuinely community-driven. The people on the ground are best placed to tell us what the problems are and to get behind the solutions. The process enables a vision, values, goals, objectives, and actions that bring past and present work together on the same page. The output is a living plan that can pivot and change according to success, challenges, and community needs. A monitoring plan based on existing data sets to track action and outputs through to outcomes and impacts is also developed as part of this process. So conservation standards are used internationally to co-develop conservation plans with communities. This is a globally recognised framework for designing, managing and monitoring conservation projects. Most staff involved in the ICM process have been trained in this to ensure it is delivered consistently across the region. And this slide shows that there are 5 steps involved in the process. So assess, plan, implement, analyse and adapt, and share. And this is the process we use to develop catchment action plans. So CAPs are co-developed with an integrated catchment group, which includes community members, mana whenua, ORC councillors, territorial authorities, Department of Conservation, LINZ, and other key stakeholders. Supporting this is the ICM working group, made up of councillors, Ōkaha, Te Ao Marama, Otago catchment communities, and ORC staff. Once a catchment action plan is endorsed by council, a CAP governance group is established to drive delivery. Mana-to-mana engagement ensures that mana whenua perspectives are embedded throughout the process. Internally at ORC, implementation project working groups then focus on delivering specific actions. It's a multi-layered governance and delivery structure designed for inclusivity and accountability. The work of catchment conservation and community groups is vital to this program. They bring local knowledge, experience and momentum on the ground, and the ICM program isn't here to replace or stop what's already happening, but to recognise and support that work, identify opportunities and gaps, and help connect efforts across the wider catchment. The ICM program was reviewed in September 2025 with the goal to look to accelerate the delivery of the program and streamline governance and oversight arrangements. An independent review was undertaken and reported back to Council in September. The key recommendations were to clarify and strengthen governance and decision making, secure long-term funding that is accessible to all catchments, and improve efficiency by streamlining CAP development. The review also recommended scaling geographic scope and introducing some quick win actions to build momentum. And finally, it highlighted the need for a coordinated program management approach to ensure scalability and consistency across the region. The next step is for staff to develop an implementation plan responding to the review recommendations. This will be presented to Council in early 2026 for consideration. And at this stage, there will be a decision for Council to make on the rollout order for the next CAPs. And meanwhile, we'll continue to work on developing the Tari Catchment Action Plan. So are there any questions on the ICM program?
Good, thanks, Libby. Matt, all yours.
Gee, thanks. Hey, it's awesome what's happened through the Upper Lakes program here. And I just for clarity, having listened to the council meeting in September, in my opinion, the ICM is an opportunity for ORC to show leadership in showing it in coordinating and helping others to get the work done. I've just noted here, we had as far as I'm concerned, we had to unleash action from others. Yeah, I'm a big fan of it. It doesn't mean we are doing the the pest control or weeding or whatever the stuff is. We could be, but there's so many groups out there that will benefit from being having a coordinated and collaborative aspect to what they're doing, knowing that they're making a bigger impact because they're working with others, and that's where OIC can grease those wheels to keep things going all in the right direction. So that's what I see as the opportunity for the ICM, and just for simplicity's sake, there's so much jargon and all that sort of stuff, and it's fantastic. I think I've got my head around it, but I think the way I look at it is an ICM is about being organised. So when I mean being organised, it's also an opportunity to be efficient. So, for example, if there's a farm or a land holding of some particular area in one place, I reckon there's an opportunity for, instead of them being approached by multiple different organisations about weed control or water sampling or predator control, that there's an opportunity here for that to be coordinated and organised, so that farmer or land manager or whatever it might be has one contact where they go, hey, I'm here on behalf of the ICM, to organise stuff. We're keen on doing this sort of stuff with you. How about we do it this way? So I see it as being a benefit, kind of a customer service sort of thing, rather than have 10 different vehicles go up the driveway to talk to a station holder somewhere. Then it could be one that goes up, hey, this is what we're looking at, this is what we're working on, would you be keen to be part of it? So I think that's where the opportunity is as well. So no questions, more a compliment, and just wanted to add that little bit of clarification, which may or may not help. Thanks.
Good stuff. Thanks very much, Matt. Kate.
I think anyone who's been involved in the CAP process understands its benefits and really enjoys the process. The jargon is something I think we do have to work on, because it's a process, and we have to be trusted in the process, but there are some words that get in the way of that sometimes. The review generally said it was a good process, but there are some internal things that we need to address, and I suppose the question for me is, how quickly will those issues be turned round as the review found, especially internal, working across the different parts of council, how that beds out. And the reason I'm asking is the Taieri is an area that has had a lot of work in it, and the last thing people want to be doing is being asked the same questions again. They want to know that the work they've already done has informed the process without having to be done again.
So I'll just go first and then Libby can give you the details. So some of the stuff that was in the review in terms of how we work across the organisation was in train and in place in terms of how we work together, but the team has been working on an implementation plan, and I'll let Libby speak to some of those quick internal wins and how we're working for the Taieri as well.
Yeah, so some of those things were already underway, and there's some opportunity for us to improve internally as well. So we've taken that up. We've got specific internal working groups set up specifically for the Taieri, but also for the wider implementation plan as well, which will engage a whole lot of different people across the organisation and involve them in the process, which is really important, because we're getting lots of shared ideas on different ways of working, and that's a really beneficial thing for us. But yeah, in terms of the Taieri, we've already got that kind of project team set up, and there's leads from each of the different teams across the organisation who can then tap into other resources in their own teams to bring along and contribute to that development. So.
And as you will have seen coming to the community liaison groups in the river space, that we are making those connections internally. So that was an ask from Tom's team for our team to come and report to that. So there's very much those connections that were there are being strengthened with this process.
When is the Taieri kicking off?
There's a tentative date for the 10th of December for a community meeting, but that will need to be moved. So that will come out shortly around what date it will be.
Right.
So not too far away.
Thanks, Kate. Janelle.
Thank you. It all sounds incredibly sensible, and this is what happens globally. It's awesome. I just see a really strong focus on the conservation standards there. Obviously, there's an important connection with social, economic, and cultural considerations. It seems like we're very strong on the social, cultural, and conservation considerations. I'm just wondering, what place does sustainable economic development play in an integrated catchment management plan, given that these are primary industries, often people who are working the land? What what considerations are there for economic considerations, and MB and MFE also in the loop for this stuff?
So for your MB and MFE question, they're not part of our individual ICM working groups. There's representatives that we ask for from LINZ and DOC. So that's a really good point. We can take that away and connect with MB and MFE to ensure that they know we're doing this work. We have had, I think they already do know, because we have had quite a few other councils reach out to us to understand our program, and they've been referred on by organisations such as that. But I will ensure that we are connecting that to both of those organisations. For the sustainable economic development question, that's a really good question. So I was heavily involved in the Catlins process, and we had representation across a wide variety of different kind of user groups. So we had tourism represented, we had farming, we had forestry. So those people that were part of the group brought that viewpoint to the discussion. So it will be reflected in the actions that come out of it. From memory, there's no specific economic development action, but it should all be embedded into the actions that have fallen out of that process through the representation that those representatives have provided, and Councillor Wilson and also Councillor Hollier might have some input too from their involvement.
Okay.
Look, I've been reflecting on CATS as being a base tool that could be used for RMA reform, because I think it's catchment scale, it's a much better process. And it's a really good question you raised. For me, the process is understandably really looking at pressures. The RMA at the currently, but very rarely articulated well, talks about stresses and benefits. And the one thing that I do think in hindsight is that we haven't looked at the opportunities. So it's very focused on pressures, and we could be looking at opportunities, and that would then give a much better way to reflect at a catchment scale what regulatory functions may need to be backing up that CAT project, rather than I don't want to put the regulatory in this non-regulatory process, but I think a good regulatory process should be backing up, not overreaching beyond a CAT. And so it's a really good, it's something that we should be considering as going forward.
Just go to Matt.
Yeah, Chanel, good point. The conservation standards absolutely can provide for any dimension that you want to add to it. It's an incredible tool, and it's basically a way of capturing all the information that a community or a region or whatever you want to call can use. So absolutely that can be used. And I agree with Kate that that's an opportunity we need to make sure we optimise. Yeah, there's stakeholders from, whether it's Fed Farmers or a community farming group, as well as tourism sectors and that sort of stuff, you'd easily dial into. And it's all about getting all the information into a single place, and everybody understanding the different pressures and the opportunities all in that direction. So the tool itself is incredible, and ORC staff have been very good at utilising it. So yeah, the opportunity is there to use it. So I'd endorse going for it.
Thank you.
I think there is a point there about it's important to have the community-led aspect, and we all agree on that, absolutely. But I think Kate and others' points around the power of perhaps bringing nationally as well, because yeah, we don't need to have the MBs driving the project potentially at the beginning, but we do need to have people aware of the power of the community-led approach, and understanding from a national level what's happening and where they can assist as well, without, again, coming in on top and saying, well, we know how to solve this, or here's some money, you know, but at least to be part of the process and understand, and together we're far stronger than apart as well. So there is something there, I think, to connect the dots nationally. Thanks.
Any more queries on ICM? If not, we'll move on to the pest plan. Thank you.
Right, thank you. So the current regional pest management plan covers 2019 to 2029 and manages harmful pests that affect Otago's environment, economy and communities. It identifies 51 pest species, both plant and animal, and sets out rules for their management or eradication under the Biosecurity Act 1993. Essentially, this plan provides the framework for how we manage pest species across the region. So under the Biosecurity Act, regional councils are responsible for providing regional leadership to prevent or manage the impacts of harmful organisms. A pest is any organism identified in our regional plan. Our current regional pest management plan includes 5 programs: exclusion, eradication, progressive containment, sustained control, and site-led management. Each one outlines the management approach for different pests depending on their risk and distribution. This structure ensures a targeted and proportionate response to pest management. Is that the right one?
I think so.
So alongside management programs, ORC takes a balanced approach to compliance and enforcement. We focus on using the right tool at the right time, starting with advocacy and education, supporting community engagement, and issuing work request letters where pests have been located to inform land occupiers of any concerns that staff identify. When necessary, we can escalate to formal actions such as notices of direction, default actions, or even prosecution under the Biosecurity Act. We have an education first approach to our role, but have tools that we can use where compliance is not being met. Our biosecurity compliance and enforcement policy outlines our role in the space, and you can see a little snip of that, which is on our website. So the RPMP must be reviewed every 10 years, and we are commencing reviewing it early to make sure it remains fit for purpose. Reporting for this has been provided to the Environmental Strategy and Planning Committee to date. So why are we reviewing the plan? Community expectations have evolved. There are some inconsistencies between rules for different plant species. Some rules are difficult to interpret and don't reflect broader issues. There are also editing errors, duplicated pests, and a lack of flexibility to add new species. An effectiveness review has already been undertaken and its recommendations have been adopted by Council. The review is a chance to modernise and improve the plan to meet today's needs as well as being fit for the future. So there are 7 phases for the review of the plan, and these are included on the slide alongside the timing for when each phase will happen. There are a couple of updates to this slide, which I'll just go through because it's not quite up to date. So the planning and preparation phase should go through until the end of February 2026, not end on June 2025. And so that's the stage that we're undertaking at the moment. And this includes designing the method for the review, species audits, and creating an engagement and communications plan. And the engagement phase should say that it will commence in March 2026 and will go through till June, with public notifications starting in July 2026.
So the process is dictated in the Biosecurity Act, and that is under review at present.
Yes.
So what are the implications of that potential review?
So from what I understand, the review is still underway, but the Biosecurity Act review should make these timeframes shorter, and it should be easier to undertake a review, is my understanding.
Okay, and the other part of that is the suggestion that we work interregionally.
I'll talk about that
Great.
shortly. Oh, next one.
Matt.
Is there a note in here somewhere about how this ties in with the national pest management plan? Is that being reviewed at the same time, or are we ahead or behind the curve on that one?
So the Biosecurity Act is under review, and
Right.
part of the endorsement we had from council, which Councillor Kelleher raised, I believe, at the time when it was when it was endorsed that we bring forward the review of the plan, was to make sure we aligned with the Biosecurity Act review as well, to make sure we didn't have to then review our plan again, which makes absolute sense. So we're keeping an eye on that. I believe it is tracking okay. MPI are leading the review of the Biosecurity Act. So we should be fine in terms of those timeframes, but we'll make sure to communicate that if it changes.
Thank you.
Okay, so the current timeline for the RPMP review, which council's endorsed, is designed to ensure that we are working in step with other regional councils across the South Island. It allows us to align our work with other regional councils who are also reviewing their plans, which helps us share technical information and be more cost efficient. At a governance level, there are ongoing discussions with other South Island councils about how pests are managed and how we can collaborate with regional pest management plans. This approach also ensures that we stay in step with any future changes to the Biosecurity Act and can give effect to them as they come through. We have really strong relationships with other South Island councils and across the country as well, and we're continuing to strengthen our collaboration with the South Island councils. Our teams are working closely together, sharing knowledge, data, and technical expertise, both as part of our business as usual and through our RPMP review process. At a governance level, our previous chair initiated this collaborative approach by writing to other South Island councils to formalise our intent to work together on pest management. Engagement across the South Island is strong, and that collaboration is already delivering value. It's supporting predator-free projects across regions, alignment of pathway plans and objectives within our RPMPs, the co-design of monitoring data and reporting systems to improve efficiency and enable coordinated responses when they're needed, pooling our expertise and resources to strengthen early detection capability, and ensuring South Island voices are represented and heard at a national level. Overall, this joined-up approach is helping us work smarter, not in isolation, and to deliver more consistent and effective outcomes for biosecurity across the South Island.
Sorry, and thank you for mentioning the governance. So I absolutely appreciate the staff are working really well collaboratively across the country. The question I have, and because of the letter that we're going to potentially working with the governance across the South Island, what will that look like? Because it hasn't been set up yet, and because at a governance level, it will be, I think, where you get to talk to ministers particularly more than staff might. Maybe I've got that wrong, and I'm just wondering what that will look like.
Yeah, and it'll be something to pick up with the chair and the new portfolio leads and around this table paper discussion on what that actually looks like. So the letters were sent just only a couple of months ago, so we'll pick that certainly up with this new council.
Thank you.
You know,
I'm just wondering if outside of this forum, could just receive a bit of an understanding of how the predator-free projects feed into and sit alongside the plan, and also so the funding and the placement of things, and then just a bit more of an understanding around the monitoring data and reporting systems that are in place and in the budget that's attached to that. And then my only thing is, I don't want us relying on and waiting on other councils to do their thing. Are we prioritising what we can do in our areas or our responses? While we're working with others. I obviously assume that that's happening contemporaneously, but is that a priority?
just before Joe replies, because this conversation might be a few minutes.
Yes.
But at 11 o'clock, I'm going to stop the meeting and we will stand to just recognise and acknowledge Remembrance Day, stand for a moment, and then we'll, if we haven't finished this conversation, we'll finish it and then we'll have a 10-minute break for a brew. Okay, is that okay, Carol?
Cannons
Yes,
of
good.
fire.
Joe?
Just acknowledging Matt, that just said he's leaving in 50 minutes.
Oh, okay, thank you.
I can answer some of the
Yeah, you
issues.
So in terms of predator free, Otago Regional Council provided funding to predator free Dunedin when it was first established, and I believe that funding was over 5 years, and it ceased maybe 2 or 3 years ago. We do still provide support and funding to predator free Dunedin for some Osprey transition work that's going on in the West Harbour Mount Cargill area, where they're looking at how to transition from Osprey doing possum control in that area, and then what ORC's role could look like in the future potentially. So that's what we're doing with predator free Dunedin. In terms of the data systems and the budget attached, so there's a massive project happening across our organisation, not just for biosecurity, but for every, pretty much every part of it, which is called Iris NextGen. So that is really the data sharing across, I think, is it 9 councils that are involved in that will happen. It's already happening kind of at the project level, but longer term there'll be a consistent way of how we collect and show data, which is really exciting. Joe might be able to comment more around when that's meant to be implemented.
We just started the initiate phase yesterday, which is a highly technical IT term, but it's very much underway, which is incredibly exciting because it will give consistency of reporting and information that is collected in that biosecurity space across the country, which will enable actions and coordination. So yeah, very exciting space to be in. And I'll just stop there.
Okay, if we just like to stand, we're standing here today to acknowledge Remembrance Day on the 11th of November to recall the end of the First World hostilities. Hostilities ended at the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month of 1918. Thank you.
And then just in the other part of that question around continuing to do work in the biosecurity space while we work on the regional pest management plan, yeah, absolutely continuing to support the community in that biosecurity space too. We've got some community positions which Libby can speak to, but also ensuring that we undertake our biosecurity compliance role, be that starting as education through to any more formal action as needed, because the community does have expectations around the management of pests, and we need to continue to support that work and deliver on the regional pest management plan at the moment. So we do have a prioritised work program And it goes to the minister every year, and then we report through on how we're tracking with that. But certainly the community's expectations around our role in pest management and undertaking that role are coming through loud and clear, and certainly from this table too. So very committed to doing what we can do in the meantime while we develop that plan.
Thank you, Gretchen.
I think there was one other question that was there was, how does it mesh with our current plan as well with the predator-free projects and the site-led initiative that is in there at the moment and the potential for that, so you might want to talk about that. But also one other thing, just about keeping the pressure on and identifying what we need to do in the space of pest management in Otago and how things are changing. One of the things we did as well, just towards the end of the training, was report on how we're going to the minister, which is what we have to do under the Biosecurity Act. And we also noted during that, particularly around the mammalian grazers, the deer, the goats, and the, what else, pigs. And actually during that time was election time, but we did receive a letter back from Minister Hoggard saying that he was really interested in that space as well, just updating people now. And actually it wants to come and visit us as well to get a better look at pests in Otago too. So there's an opportunity there to write back and get into that space now that we're back. But yeah, we definitely need to keep the pressure on and make sure. I think it's the same probably as any plan, isn't it? It's the implementation of your existing plan too is really important. There's a lot we can do under this plan. So yeah, but it does make a heck of a lot of sense to be working with the other councils to ensure, because pests don't know boundaries, and it's also really inefficient to do our own thing once you understand the Biosecurity Act and having to do a cost benefit analysis for every species. It's much better to be doing that more broadly. So yeah, anyway, there's lots we can talk about, but do you want to talk about site-led as well?
I had a couple of other points too. So the first one was around data systems and how we collect data, I think. So for the first time through the last LTP, we received, the council decided to invest in surveillance. So we have a surveillance budget now to undertake some of that data gathering, which was really exciting. So that was 2 years ago. And I think it's about $100,000 we have at the moment for surveillance work. So that's, you asked about budget attached to collecting data. So that was that one. In terms of the PFD, predator-free Dunedin, we do, so I spoke about the 5 different management areas we have within our plan, and site-led programs are one of those. And there are specific rules and objectives within the site-led program that connect to specifically to the outcomes that predator-free Dunedin we're looking to achieve in terms of reducing possum numbers. So there's rules in the plan around and objectives around supporting their objective of eradicating. And then the other thing around prioritisation, I think your question was about making sure we lead where we need to and we're not dragged in with other councils if they're not, at the same level as us. And so we've got some really good examples of how we've supported that, especially through the Asian Gold Plan. We advocated on behalf of the South Island to have, the chair did at the time, to have some controls in place at the Cook Strait, which is a border that we could use, and went to MPI and suggested that they look into that. They didn't take that up as something that they could action, but that was a very different view to what the North Island have, because they already have the clan in the North Island, so they're looking at how they contain it within their own specific areas, but probably hadn't thought about how to protect the South Island generally. So there's advocacy work we're doing there that doesn't always fully align with what everyone else is doing, but again, the power of us all working together is really, really that goes a long way. And we've done a lot of that work with avian flu as well, so that's being coordinated nationally now. So there are really good examples we've got around that collaborative approach to biosecurity, knowing that for avian flu specifically, we don't know where that's going to end up, which area of the country it will be. But knowing that we have the support for from the rest of the country if it does come here is a great thing and something that we can be prepared for.
Okay, no, thank you.
Or Gary. Am I right that within Crown public land, that the rules are different around pest control and management? There is a buffer zone around the boundary of that, and then within the buffer zone, they are required to manage, and then all other land of their Crown land, basically they aren't required to undertake the same level of control.
That is correct. So that we have what is called a good neighbour rule, and that's dictated by the Biosecurity Act. So we've provided feedback around the limitations of the Biosecurity Act and enabling that, because that, you know, in some instances that doesn't stop the problem. So if you look at rabbits, for example, that move more than 200 metres, I think is the rule. They've got a if there's active control being undertaken by a neighbour, then the Crown needs to undertake control within that 200 metre boundary. But we know that rabbits move more than 200 metres, so sometimes that causes problem for neighbouring properties, and we've provided that feedback up to Minister Hoggard as well.
So under a plan review, we don't have the opportunity to explore changes or impose a stronger level of outcome than that currently sits under the Act.
We could look at what the buffer zones are, I think, but that would need to go through the cost benefit analysis as well. But because it's dictated under the Biosecurity Act, in terms of the Crown have that ability to have a good neighbour rule, and I guess that enables them to plan where they will undertake their control, because if there's a neighbour beside them not doing work, it doesn't make sense for them to do that at that time. It's the same as, you know, that's how biosecurity works, right? You want to have a coordinated approach to it. So if it comes through in the Biosecurity Act review that is amended, then that would help us. But because it's dictated by the legislation, we need to follow that.
So Minister Hoggard's offer around any issues or concerns, that's a hot one
It is.
that we would be highlighting and possibly over and above all others.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Just wondering, one of the areas we haven't done a lot of, sorry, as council is Lawrence, as in, sorry, councillors, not staff, I'm sure they are, and it's a big issue there. I'm just wondering how that coordination is now going with forestry and all the issues that were,
Yes. So,
as an example.
yes, so I'm involved in that group. It's called the Neighbours of Lawrence Forestry, something like that. Anyway, and it's been coordinated by a member of that community, and they've pulled together a range of different stakeholders. So there's like there were heaps of different people in the room when I was there. We're now looking at there's 3 initiatives that they're looking to progress, and I'm involved in the pest management part of that initiative. It hasn't got specific actions in place yet to focus on, but we've got a kind of a smaller working group that is being formed to develop that up and look at what ORC can do to support in those areas. So the issues that have come to light are around pigs, deer. I think they had goats, it's pigs and deer mainly, that were coming onto farmland from forestry blocks. And so forestry and farming are both in the room around how to work together and coordinate those approaches as well. Deer and pigs aren't currently in our pest plan, so we're looking at how we can support a community-led action. MPI are also part of that working group too, so it'll be interesting to see how we get on and how we can support communities like that, because this is the first one that I can think of where we're looking at pests outside of our plan So we'll see how it goes.
And we have sought, if we can have a governance role, so a councillor role within that group, so I think they've only just had a couple of meetings, so if we can secure that role, that will come up as something that a councillor may be able to be involved in, which would be great. And we've also pivoted one of our community coordinator roles to support engagement with forestry companies and with neighbouring landowners in terms of pest management, just because it has become a priority for our communities, so how we can help within that space.
Chanel.
Is there room in our existing pest plan for amendments to then include pigs and deer outside of a full change, or is the scope for amendments in our pest plan quite narrow?
So if we were to add pests in, it would need to go to a full community consultation anyway. So when we took the original paper to endorse bringing forward the review by a year to 18 months, that was an option. But the benefits of doing the full, we'd have to then do another review in 2029. So the benefits of doing it all at once were outweighed the, but there is always an option to review a plan and add pests in if that is the desire.
Okay. And just lastly, how many community coordinators do we have?
We have 3.
Do you reckon that's enough?
Do I reckon that? I would say based on our current work programs, yes, that's enough.
Thank you.
Great answer.
I do have a couple more slides.
Yeah, we've got a question from
Oh,
Gretchen,
sorry.
and then you can get on to those last 2 slides.
It was more of an observation, sorry, but it was that initially we'd considered using those site-led opportunities in the plan because it's easier to put that in than it is to do a full plan review as well for the deer, pigs, goats, cause they popped up in certain pockets around Otago, but now they're popping up right around Otago, so less of an opportunity probably for a site-led type of approach, but it was designed under the Biosecurity Act to be a lot easier to insert that type of approach and for it to be driven by communities to address specific issues to that area. So it is an opportunity, thanks, but possibly not now.
Yes, certainly within the tools that we can use in this interim period, so it's not off the table, it's something that is still being considered and could be used if needed, so.
And catchment action plans are kind of picking up
Yeah.
some of that work too.
Yeah.
So, just weighing up whether we need
Yeah.
specific rules, and I guess if there were rules introduced, you need to look at communicating that wider as well.
Robbie, and then Gary.
Did the big carbon foresters have to get any sort of resource consenting that permitted to plant all the trees?
I'm making notes at our consent manager over the back, and the answer was no, they're not covered by the National Environmental Standard at the time. She's confirming by nodding her head at me.
Gary.
Yeah, I suppose it's more an observation than a question, but to me, definitely the new forestry, new carbon forestry, especially the utter no-brainer solution is a deer fence rabbit-proofed fence around each of those new developments. And I would hope that at a time, as those are considered into the future, that when you are weighing up the investment, the purchase of the land, the planting of the trees, all the management tools you're going to put in place, if you also put that in place, you then contain with management of those boundaries, because pest boundaries need to be maintained, but you actually contain it within, and it becomes their problem internally, they can eat their own trees rather than a problem to others. But sorry, that's a comment more than a.
Thank you. Thanks, Robbie. Any other discussion on that topic, or we can move on to the next slide? I think there's 2 slides to go. Libby?
Yep.
Please.
Okay, so for the pest plan review, a councillor reference group was established to oversee the review process. The group will help monitor progress, identify risks, and support targeted engagement. There are 2 permanently appointed members and 1 alternate. This group ensures governance oversight throughout the project and provides a direct connection between council and the review team.
And just flagging that governance group and structure was put in place under the previous council and we're moving into the space of portfolio. So again, this will be something that comes up in discussions over the next month or two.
And this is my last slide. So looking ahead, the first of a series of workshops with council on the RPMP review will be held in February 2026. These workshops will provide an opportunity for councillors to engage with the detail of the review, shape direction and provide early input. It's an important stage in ensuring that the reviewed plan reflects council's priorities and the needs of our communities. So that ends my briefing. If there's any other questions, please let me know.
If there's no further questions, thank you very much for your contribution, Libby, much appreciated. And we'll have a 10-minute break and we will come back here at 26.5 minutes past 11. And we will start with fast track consenting. Cool, thanks everyone.
is what I.
But there are, I mean, there's quite a few.
Welcome back, everybody. Welcome to this environmental delivery session, this briefing, the Otago Regional Council. Thank you very much, Kate. We are returning to start on fast track consenting, and we've got Alex King and Jenny Ross with us. Now, I won't get this right, but Alex King is consent manager and also manager of environmental delivery data and systems. And Jenny's title, I'm going to refer to Joe.
Team leader consents and is responsible for our fast track input.
Welcome along, Jenny. I don't believe you've been here around the table presenting to council, so great to have you here. Special welcome. Thank
Thank
you.
you very much.
We're in your hands.
Good to be here. Thank you. Yes, so I'm Jenny Ross, team leader in the consents team, and Alex and I are here to talk fast track consenting this morning. So in the presentation, we'll talk about the legislative history of fast track consenting in New Zealand, how the fast track process works now, and some of the key organisations involved, internal ORC processes for managing fast track work, the role of governance to date, how we share advice and information with others, and an update on applications of interest, as well as the new fast track amendment bill, which was introduced just last week. So a bit of a history lesson with fast track consenting. It all began with the COVID-19 Recovery Act 2020. This came into effect in July 2020, and the purpose was to urgently promote employment to support New Zealand's recovery from COVID-19 and to support the certainty of ongoing investment in New Zealand. There were 103 projects approved under that act, and just 12 were declined. That was repealed in 2023 and followed quickly by the Natural and Built Environment Act. So, and under this act, you could apply to the EPA to use fast track consenting for infrastructure and housing projects that met a set of eligibility criteria. The Minister for the Environment made the decisions on whether you could go through the fast track process. And finally, we are now with the Fast Track Approvals Act 2024, which came into effect in December last year. So the Fast Track Act 2024 is touted to be a permanent fast track process for obtaining resource consent and a range of other approvals for development and infrastructure projects that would deliver regional or national benefits. It's a one-stop approach and was intended to make it quicker and easier to get the approvals usually needed for large and complex projects. Projects listed in Schedule 2 of the Act don't need referral and can go straight to lodging their substantive application. This goes to an expert panel who then decide on that. There are 15 of these projects in Otago. The other way a project can get into the process is needing to be referred. And Otago currently has 3 that have been accepted through that process to date. To get through the referral, the Minister of Infrastructure determines if the criteria has been met and whether it would be accepted. And this just shows a bit of a diagram representing those 2 lanes into the fast track process, but you can see that they both converge at that substantive application phase. So although that may enter differently, the process from there is the same. There are a range of central and local government and other organisations involved in the fast track process. On the left-hand side, you can see the Ministry for the Environment and the Minister for the Infrastructure. So this is, the left-hand side talks about that referral process. The Ministry's core function is to assess referral applications and provide advice to the Minister for Infrastructure to inform his decisions on referral applications. The Ministry then provides information to the Minister of Infrastructure around eligibility, and then the Minister for Infrastructure makes that final decision. On the right-hand side, there's the EPA and also local authorities. So the EPA is a Crown agent. The EPA's fast track team administer the fast track website, the application portal, and the substantive application process. It's important to note that the EPA's fast track team is not involved in decision making for approvals. The expert panels make the decision on whether to approve consents and then what conditions would be imposed. Local authorities have responsibilities under the Act, but they do retain their existing functions under the RMA relating to resource consents, changing of consent conditions or cancelling of those, and certificates of compliance. This diagram shows the steps of council's involvement. Appreciate you won't be able to see the smaller text, but it is just to show that there are quite a few steps where we are involved and quite tight timeframes at each point. On the next slide, we'll just show you some key steps in there. So before applying to be referred into the process, the applicants must consult with relevant local authorities. So in this case, the minister would receive the application to be referred and invite comments from local authorities. They'll will then be also asked if there are any competing applications. For substantive applications, again, the applicant must consult with council and some other parties. Council also has to provide the applicant with a notice advising whether there are any competing consents. Once a substantive application is lodged, council will be provided a copy of the application, complete some more checks around completeness, competing consents, and then we have 20 working days to make a substantive comment on the application. We are also requested to nominate a person to the expert panel that will decide whether to grant the consent, and will also be given around 5 working days to comment on any draft conditions. In terms of what council comment on, we are provided with a template that we input our response into and within the set deadlines given to us by either the EPA, the panel, or the legislation. At referral, the things we get asked to comment on include competing applications. So this, I mentioned before, this relates to competing for natural or physical resources where there is a limit, such as water allocation. We also get asked about compliance history and whether any activity is classified as a prohibited activity under the RMA. At the substantive stage, the things we get asked to comment on are focused on key issues and environmental effects of the project. For requests on those substantive applications where we have 20 working days, this is the process that we follow. So you can see on day 1 to 2, we've got a lot sort of happening. We've got a planner assigned who's then reviewing that application and identifying what expertise we will need and sending that to those experts and also to delegated councillors. And then on the following days, the comments are prepared and then reviewed and signed off by that 20-day timeframe. So given it is quite tight, we try and stick to these days as much as possible. The ORC internal process and resourcing is facilitated by the consents team. There is a fast track working group that comprises a representative from a range of internal teams who input into comments and advice. We also use consultant experts from time to time where expertise or capacity is an issue, but our focus is really on quality advice, customer service, and pragmatic involvement at all stages of the fast track process. It's also worth noting that the work on these applications is fully cost recoverable. It's either directly through the applicant or through the EPA scheme. The internal process I've just discussed was approved by the previous council, and part of that approval included delegations to 2 councillors for involvement in the fast track application review and providing comments. The governance role has also been in supporting community members and applicants where needed and providing access to advice and information as well.
Question.
Yeah.
the 20 working days, does council get any warning that that's about to start? Like, does the process give you something saying that, look, be ready within a week or two, this is about to be provided to you? Or is it just a walk in on day one and it's a complete surprise, this has landed and now we're going to kick off our 1 to 2 days?
We have had some advance notice because we've had some really good pre-application consultation with our applicants. And part of that is understanding from them when they intend to lodge. And it just gives us a bit of extra time to read those draft applications or draft expert reports and get our ducks in a row. And then we also have a step before providing substantive comment, which is what's called that completeness check. So it's effectively us doing a bit of a check to against the criteria in the Fast Track Act to make sure that all the relevant documents have been provided, all the rules have been identified. So we do get a few extra days prior to that 20 working days once lodged. So convoluted answer, but yes, we do get a bit of a heads up, but not always a lot. Yeah.
Just on that as well, actually, we've been working with the EPA. We're trying to get an understanding of when we may get multiple applications at once, because we are not a massive team, so we are trying to work internally on these applications, and we don't want them coming with that 20 working days on top of each other for various different applications. We have been working with them to try and ensure they're kind of staged rather than all coming in at once.
Do they have the ability to do that? Or do they have to meet the timeframes that from when they receive this substantive application, that they've got their own timeframes to meet and we just have to slot in no matter what? So we could be at day 10 and receive one that we're then going to start at day 1 and be operating with those multiple applications all in play at different times.
Yeah, so they do have their own timeframes to work to, but when they are setting up the panel of the decision makers, that's where they've got a little bit of time where they can give us some warning around that staging. And so that's kind of where we've been trying to work with them to ensure that we have some understanding of what work's coming up so we can internally work on that.
Yeah, thanks.
So just in terms of advice and information that we are providing applicants, with it being a new process, we support them by explaining the fast track process to them and encouraging the sharing of information and reports proactively so we can review these prior to lodgement. And we have this information on our website about our process, and this is supported by other local authorities who we regularly engage with and have a similar, if not exactly the same approach. We also encourage site visits for our team, and although consultation is mandatory, it is up to each applicant how they go about that with us and how much information and how much of a heads up they're providing to us. In terms of the information we are sharing with the public, we absolutely acknowledge that some applications are of high interest and concern to the public, and that we have a duty to help inform them about our role in the process and where they can find more information. So council staff provide monthly updates to members of the public, which highlights key steps of where some of those high interest applications are at. And that diagram just shows the kind of information that we're sharing. We also respond to any questions about the fast track process and meet people in the community who would like to discuss their concerns.
Just pause there for a moment, Jenny, question now on.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, look, one thing that's been highlighted recently is about, and ongoing, is about that public information. And I suppose sort of how that links in with that 20-day time frame, because so I guess just some general comment or general and specific information about what information is publicly available and when it can be made publicly available, because I understand if people go through the recording process, that takes a certain amount of time. If we're into some of these 20-day time frames, that, and if they're having to wait for information to go through our processes to be made available, time for meaningful sort of public responses to that may be lost. How does this all work?
So I'll just start and I'll pass over to the team. So one of the important pieces of context for this is ORC is a participant in the process. So we do get supplied information from the applicants either as part of pre-application consultation or being provided copies of the reports from the EPA to then comment on. But the people who are in charge of the process, so to speak, EPA, the ministers and those groups that Jenny spoke to. So they are the ones that are provide the information and have those copies of the applications. We are then also bound by LGOIMA and that ability to share information when requested. So I'll let the team speak to the process there, and also Timmy is down the back too, that may be able to help. So go down to Jenny and Alex for a little bit of how we do handle that process at the moment.
Yeah, so the information we can provide on the website in terms of that high level overview, we do, and so that gets updated monthly after we send the email around to councillors. And then any information that is requested from the public, we do have to provide under LGOIMA. And then the EPA also has all application documents online and available for the public. It does get quite tricky as we're working through applications, like you say, within that 20 working days, what information we can provide. Technically, it all is available. Whether it's helpful for the public to get information as we're working on it is, I guess, up to the requester, but it is technically available, including any draft responses, and that's how we've been dealing with LGOIMA requests under the fast track over the last however many months, 10 or 11 months.
Right. Yeah, okay, so that does raise some interesting questions for me, that any of that information, by the sound of it, is sort of technically immediately available. Have I interpreted that right?
So it might just pass to Timmy in terms of how we run our LGOIMA process, because it's not within my team, but certainly our role is to ensure that we provide that information to support any request for the LGOIMAs, which is then handled through our legal team.
Yeah, so as has been discussed and as you've outlined, that's broadly it. Upon request for official information under the LGOIMA Act, that comes into the legal team. They receive that request and then they send it out to the relevant teams. So in a fast track situation, it would be to the consents team to say, we've got this request, this is the information they've requested, and then there's an assessment done as to what can be withheld. The principle of LGOIMA is that information is available unless there is a good reason to withhold under the Act. The Act is 1987, so it is it was drafted a long time ago, but those principles of transparency and information availability stand. And it would be fair to say that there's been a significant or substantial number of requests for fast track, which the consent team then have to work through as well, and that is additional demand on their time.
Yeah, okay. And I suppose following that up, in view of the high public interest about many of these things, would there be a good case for saying, oh, we don't need to wait for the LGOIMA request, we will just immediately make available what we can? Or are there difficulties with that approach?
I'll start and then I'll hand off to him, because there's a difference between proactive release of these documents and under the Act. And we also have a corresponding requirement, I think, under the Privacy Act as well, which we also have to navigate at the same time as ensuring we are transparent and releasing information in a timely manner. So within that, we are providing as much information in general around the process as we can, and then also providing our comments and things on the website. But in terms of the more detailed stuff, I'll just pass back down to the team.
Yes, I agree with Joe's comments. We are, as soon as we have completed our comments, we're trying to get those up on the website. As you can see, that timeframe's very tight. So we are working in those timeframes, but we are very aware that the public are interested, and like I say, we're happy to meet and discuss with them at any point. But in terms of actually uploading those documents, that sort of happens once we've had those comments signed off, then they're put on the website and sent to the EPA. They're also published on the EPA website as well. And any panel conference or hearing is also videoed, and that video recording is also on the EPA website.
Okay, thank you. Thanks.
Janelle, thank you, Helen.
Did we, did we submit on the amendment bill? In the process?
That closes on the 17th.
Okay,
Yeah, so that's coming Monday.
Are we submitting on it?
Kate?
My understanding is that the staff are preparing something for Neil and myself to look at, maybe signed off by staff, but it's a work in progress. The timeframes are very tight.
Thank you. Okay.
This process seems really, what is it that flags for the public interest that the process has started? And when I was looking at the bill, apart from a public statement saying, you know, we're going out and opening a mine or applying for a mine fast track, it seems to be very much about the applicant choosing, they don't choose. They're directed to who they can communicate with, but it's very much reliant on them doing what they need to do. And is the EPA make sure that they've consulted with everyone? It's not really clear.
Yes, so as part of the EPA's role administering the process, as Jenny said, we are a participant. They have to ensure we are involved. And then it's up to the EPA to let everyone know that the applicant has applied. We're doing our own in terms of making sure that's on the website and letting people who have said that they're interested know that these applications have been lodged. But it is up to the EPA to administer.
Yeah, sorry, I understand or maybe it's in the bill that it seems to defer almost the applicant to do some of that stuff, or am I misreading it?
Yeah, there is a lot on the applicant and what they choose and how they choose to engage or consult before something is prepared. And we've seen various approaches depending on the type of project or where it's located or how far through they are in terms of already having engaged with the community on it. But the Act has been set up with a different approach to public participation to typical resource management processes. So that's where you're seeing that difference in terms of the level of public participation in the process today. And the bill's been drafted on that basis.
I do understand it's going to be a different process. I suppose my nervousness with the bill is it seems to take a lot of that to the applicant on trust. Okay, and that's I'm just flagging into my mind because I'm now slightly dog deep in this.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you.
Just talking more about that information that we're providing, this is just a screenshot of part of our website that you can see. We have what information is there that we're providing, including those FAQs. And then we're also referring people to the Fast Track website, which we've got a screenshot of here, so you can search in for any project, any region, any status, and it will come up with all that information we've talked about. That includes minutes from the panel conveners, correspondence, hearing recordings, everything you would want to find is available there. Okay, so just by way of update, in terms of, I think Alex already alluded to it, but how we update ourselves, we send councillors monthly updates from the Fast Track team. And for this council, that will begin at the end of this month. And in that update, we'll provide access to the comments that ORC are providing to those applications. By way of project updates, the 3 projects that are of interest and moving through the process are Matakanui Gold Limited, which is a wholly owned subsidiary of Santana Minerals. They have lodged their substantive application with the EPA, and we are completing our what's called a completeness check, which is required by that Fast Track Act. Once we have done that, the Fast Track team at the EPA will then confirm whether they agree the application is complete, and then that project will move to the next stage, which will be a panel convener meeting where the applicant and other parties are put in a room virtually and discuss the issues, and that allows the expert, the panel convener to determine who will be on the expert panel deciding the application. Homestead Bay is a housing development near Jacks Point in Queenstown, and it's also progressing through the process, and an expert panel has been set up to make a decision on that one. ORC have submitted its comments on the substantive application, and we expect a decision for that on 18 February 2026. And finally, Airburn Screen Hub. This is a film studio and accommodation development just near Arrowtown. And it's also progressing through, and a panel has been stood up. And we have not yet been asked to make substantive comment, but we anticipate that shortly. And the final decision by the panel will be by the 2nd of April. Lastly, just a comment on that amendment bill that came in last week. We understand this contains around 100 amendments to the existing Act. And the government's statement is that the bill introduced makes a series of technical changes to improve the efficiency of the Act and cut project application processing times. So we are still working through what those changes would mean for us if enacted as drafted. I believe it's been reported back from the select committee by no later than the 2nd of December. So we won't have to wait long to see how that will look. But some of the key changes in the bill are the removal of the pre-app consultation requirements and replacing that with a pre-application notice, which we then have 20 working days to respond to. And we're not sure what that notice would look like and the details of that notice at this point. There's also a 60 working day time limit on decision making for substantive applications. The ability for applicants to modify their substantive applications is also included, and the ability to impose conditions that require infrastructure be made adequate to support a fast track process. And lastly, the ability to make regulations to limit cost recovery and exclude cost recovery for certain matters. That is the end of our slides.
Excellent, thank you very much. Questions, comments? Okay.
So on that last point of costs, how much work is this requiring of staff over and above what the normal work was, and is it being all recovered?
So the fast track is currently undertaken within the consents team, and then we get support from various other teams within council with technical knowledge and things. And so that's within our existing budgeted FTEs. Anything that we are working on applications specifically, we are on charging to applicants, either, as Jenny said, straight to the applicant or through the EPA. And there is a portion of work setting up the fast track system that was non-chargeable time, which we've just included in our current budget. So
How big is that?
we are tracking it. I'd have to come back to you on the specifics.
That's fine. And so just checking that I understand the consent staff being charged out, and we've got a system for doing that. Charging out the other staff members that you need to get expertise from. And I don't think we've gotten that necessarily in our fees, in our annual plan, maybe we do. Are you charging that out?
Yes, so anything, it's exactly the same. So anything that is on charge to an applicant is under our fees and charges on charge, like we normally would with any consent application under the RMA from those technical teams.
Okay.
Any other queries, questions? All good? Awesome. On behalf of us, thank you very much, Jenny and Alex. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
Moving on to navigational safety bylaw. Welcome to our Harbour Master, Steve Rushbrook. Good to have you here, Steve.
Good morning, thank you.
We're in your hands.
Oh, excellent. So good morning, everybody. And thanks for the opportunity to talk this morning, or today. We aren't nearly afternoon. I'm just going to run through a little bit of an introduction to the Harbour Master team department, a briefing and some context, and then I'll roll into the navigational safety bylaws, which are due for review pretty soon. Okay, so we are a team of 3 people, myself, Pete Driver and Jennifer Bolstad. We're based at Halsey Street down in Dunedin here. I obviously have the top role. Pete has a deputy harbour master's role, but he's also got the capability to enforce at my level. He's got a delegation from Maritime New Zealand, the same as I have. And Jennifer backs up the team as the operations officer, recently qualified as a skipper. So we have 3 skippers. Pete brings a massive background from Maritime New Zealand with him, and is a huge sort of asset to our team in that regard. So yeah, that's the 3 of us based at Halsey, and down at Halsey we've got a depot there that stores boats, vessels, and all of the oil spill response equipment. And I guess I'll just touch on that while I can, is that council have an obligation to maintain 20 trained staff for oil spill response. Maritime New Zealand support that process here by way of training, financial, travel. All of the equipment that is in the store is all supplied and maintained by Maritime New Zealand. So essentially, if something goes wrong within our harbour and our coastline, we're in a position to respond with their equipment. We have regional on-scene commander capability, and there's a lot of financial ability once you get into notifying an incident at that level, and a lot of support from the maritime team. And we're often doing training exercises with them just to keep up to speed. So that's just a little, I say a little side issue, but when it goes down, it's obviously really, really key. We run 2 vessels. That one in the first picture there, which is a Macleay, which sits in Cromwell now permanently. Well, not permanently, but it sits in Cromwell to save towing to and from, and it enabled us to cover the central lakes. So for Lake Dunstan, we have harbour master liability, but obviously across the other lakes I'll touch on in a second, we don't, because we've delegated that. And that vessel in central is also used quite a lot in support of the environmental monitoring team and the water sampling programme across all of our lakes in Otago. And that sees us on the water out there every month. Our main responsibility is you know, purely around navigational safety on the water, your use of the water, and for maintaining Port and Harbour Marine Safety Code compliance, navigational aids, buoys, marks, signage across our waterways, oil spill response I just touched on, and boating safety education and advice. As an example, in the boating safety area, we just carried out a bar crossing seminar in Brighton last week. We had 100 people in the room, which was really, really good. Just educating people on how to be safe, and not just us, putting other agencies in the room alongside us to have that discussion with people. And we have another one planned for the end of the month in Owaka, down in the Catlins. So yeah, just targeting those audiences where we can, you know, do our best work really. So our area of coverage is obviously across Otago, but for harbour master function, we've delegated the QLDC area to them for appointment of harbour masters and bylaws. So we cover all of the rest now. 2020, the CODC area came back to us. We transferred that delegation back, reviewed the bylaws at that point. And you'll see to the north and the south of our borders, and the line out to the sea there is out to the 12 nautical mile limit. So that's really our responsibility across all of our waterways in the region. So what we're dealing with, we've got obviously a commercial port here. It's the 4th or 5th biggest port in New Zealand, on our doorstep in Dunedin. And we're dealing with 700 plus large ship movements per year. I think we're about 80-ish cruise ships this year. That was up to 120 last year. And I don't see that getting any smaller at the moment, but it's likely to increase more and more just on trade and business and everything else. And Port Otago obviously do a really good job in that area. My responsibility there is to engage with the port team and make sure those large vessels can navigate through our harbour safely, and how we mitigate that, how we deal with the pilots and stuff like that. We obviously have a vast water space across our area, rivers, lakes, coast. It's really diverse, and there's a lot of usage, you know, from somebody on a paddleboard to the biggest cruise ships in the world, essentially coming into our harbour, of what we're dealing with on a day-to-day basis. And an ever-growing need to ensure we're as safe as we can be and educate people in what to do. So why do we have this role? Council has a responsibility to manage navigation safety under the Maritime Transport Act. And that Act empowers regional councils to make navigational safety bylaws and appoint harbour masters to ensure maritime safety across the regions. The navigational bylaws help us do that assist with the regulation of ports, harbours, waters, maritime related activities in our region. The bylaw we're dealing with currently was put in place in 2019. Prior to that, it had expired, I think, in 2013, a long time ago.
Yes.
So it had lapsed upon my arrival 8 years ago. We were working with nothing here, so we've done quite well to get this to where it is. And then it was amended in September 2020, which included the transfer of delegation back to us from CODC for the Central Otago piece, essentially Lake Dunstan and the rivers up to the QLDC borders. To put that in some sort of maritime context, it allows us to exercise control of maritime safety to pass bylaws arising from the Maritime Transport Act. The harbour and the shipping channel in Port Chalmers is, I put relatively narrow. in regards to large ships, it's very narrow and it's winding. And if you ask the pilots on a national panel, where's the most challenging entry into a port in New Zealand, it would be this one. So it's a real challenge, and I'll show you why it's a real challenge in a minute. There's some really narrow parts, some tricky parts where, you know, the pilots earn their big money at the end of the day, and that's really at the Harrington Bend, which is a 90-degree bend with tide and environmental influences, and through the islands at the halfway islands is a really narrow gap, 93 metres. To put a big ship through there on a constant bend is a huge challenge. So added to that, high level of recreational use across Otago, especially across the holiday periods and in the central lakes. You know, and everybody likes a bit of recreational boating of some description or another, and we're constantly keeping our eyes on developments in that area with foiling and wing foils and things like that are coming. And the bylaw is part of the improvements to maritime safety management across our region at the end of the day. It's our go-to sort of support mechanism. So hopefully this plays. I'll preload it. This is about 185 metre ship. It's just coming down towards Akron and Pulling Point and towards Port Chalmers. It's a quick 30-second time lapse, and it gives you an idea. What to look for is the port as it comes up in a minute, the turn through the island, and how narrow the beacons become as you're standing on one of these ships. Port's just coming up now. Through the gap, breathe in. You'll see it's low water as well, so you get a good idea where the shoals are and the wall on the left as we go down here. You can see where those beacons are on either side. It's really tight, yeah. There's no get out here if something goes wrong with one of these ships. Yeah, tugs in place. So when we're dealing with the Port and Harbour Marine Safety Code, this is the sort of stuff we're looking at and how we do it safely with the pilotage and the port team. Yeah, that includes simulators, incident management, incident review, keeping an eye on the what's happening nationally and internationally with notable events that, you know, we can learn from and that sort of thing. So yeah, the big stuff's obviously quite key, and we have to remember that this harbour, you know, is the artery for, you know, the whole of the South Island here, and it's crucial we maintain it safe. So we don't need a ship blocking it up like you have in the Suez Canal sort of thing, you know. On the other side of that, we do some quite a lot of media engagement. And I just added this in. This is a little piece we've just done recently. It's coming to a place near you very soon with Jonah Nareki from the Highlanders. Done this year's safety campaign. This will
On
be
the field, I play by the rules, and I do the same out here. On the boat, jet ski or paddleboard, be a responsible skipper.
Follow speed limits, wear a life jacket, don't drink, and look out for your teammates.
Good on you, mate. Well done.
Behind the scenes of a recreational community we've done in the past. We've fronted quite a lot of that ourselves, mostly Pete and I, which has gone down reasonably well, and all of our videos are available all the time. We still circulate them appropriately, but we're always trying to refresh that as we go. So The navigational safety bylaw as it currently is, that's the front couple of pages there. It mostly deals with recreational boating and it's born out of the maritime rules, national maritime rules in section 91. There are specific sections in there for the Otago Harbour and for Lake Dunstan, so people get that as a target acquired. It has an enforcement infringement process aligned with the bylaw, so that gives us the power to enforce if we need to, and provides a focus for all of our interactions with the boating safety discussions and commercial and recreational users. But really the challenge is commercial versus non-commercial recreation and power versus non-powered vessels or boats, you know. So upcoming, we have through the LGA, we have a requirement for the bylaws to be reviewed. And this bylaw has been operational since 2019, and there are areas that could be updated and changed. So specifically, when it comes to the table, we're looking to add the use of automatic identification system, AIS, for commercial vessels. That's following a number of incidents, and that's also something that other areas are developing and Maritime New Zealand support. The standard operating procedures for the Victoria Channel, following a number of groundings and incidents and large and medium vessels. We've altered that already. We'd like to get it into the bylaw so that it's up front and everybody can see it a little bit more. It's in the standard operating procedures of port, but that needs to come to the fore. Just some edits around incident reporting because we've got a new online process now, and just some edits on the old one that needs dealing with. Anchoring and mooring. We're looking at just adjusting that a little bit better. We come across a couple of issues, technical issues, in that you can moor a vessel, anchor a vessel for 14 days in the harbour, and then you can move it to another proximate location, which means you can move it from where Perry is to where Andrew is, and stay another 14 days. So we're just editing that so we don't succumb to somebody going, well, I'll just move it over there, Steve, when I need to move it to a legal position on a mooring or on a berth somewhere. So we're looking at that as well. And there's just some minor editorial corrections to be made.
Can I just ask a question there, Steve? If somebody is living on a vessel, anchored in the harbour, would that apply, that same scenario, if they were able to move to a new location, that they could continue on living on a boat in the harbour?
So the issue there is he anchor or is he on a mooring? So if he's an anchor, he comes under my regime. Yeah. If he's on a mooring, comes under the consent process.
Okay.
Your RMA, because they'll have a coastal permit on a mooring. And then that's a whole discussion around liverboards and what the RMA does or doesn't allow. If that makes sense. So I'm just looking at the vessel anchoring. And that's my piece. Do I need him sat there? You know, he can come in temporarily at anchor. That's fine, no problem. But you're not going to live there for ages and ages. You need to get compliant and get legal.
We have another query. Okay. Good.
Yeah, you've just sparked a different thought. It may be a rabbit hole which I shouldn't go down. Just tell me if it isn't. Back Beach, there's some interesting development there about people's ability to continue to anchor, I think, there.
To use an anchor?
Yes. Is that right? Or
not to my knowledge, there isn't. I mean, there's an area there that's got coastal permits on it and moorings in that location. And it's pretty full up, to be fair, where the area is, as are most of our mooring areas. I'm not aware, you know, there's a channel comes in there, so there's actually no real position in that location to anchor.
Well, maybe the question is, we've got a harbour plan and things. So when we get to capacity in moorings, is there any role for the ORC to be ensuring that there is more space or moorings or anchoring available, or is that very much other people go and develop them? And
I think it's a three-way conversation. It's not my bag, really, although I will have some input like you will. But I think it's a three-way conversation with DCC, Port Otago and ourselves when it comes to developing those spaces. Yeah.
And there's also a lot of this is covered by our coastal plan as well, and the rules and requirements that are set by that as well. So whilst state has a clear navigational safety role, there's also a role for wider ORC in terms of how we administer the coast plan and the rules that are in there around moorings as well, and also our involvement in the harbour plan and the involvement with those other agencies as well.
Lots of opportunities.
Yes, and an iwi role potentially.
Robbie.
Does the harbour master have any role or responsibility on recreational river users?
Yes. Essentially, so these bylaws are really aimed at the recreational community, and like wearing of life jackets, safe speeds, speed uplifts, reserved areas, event management, all that sort of thing. So yes, I have a constant interaction with river users where jet boats can and can't go fast across our region. That's not something we had a focus on before we were in role here. So it's obviously a big piece. I was dealing with some internal stuff with external jet boaters last week. I've had a number of inquiries, and we're obviously getting into season, and I'll deal with either hazards, usually speeding, jet boats, jet skis, dare I say. But yeah, anything sort of navigational on the rivers comes under us as well.
And we have put in some signs on some rivers and done awareness around that. And also as part of the summer program, we do keep an eye out on some key recreational spots, certainly around the Balclutha area as well. Yeah.
Yeah, we deal with some quite remote places, you know, some of the dams and Blue Lake, places like that, Great Moss Swamp. And we've been to all of those locations, Mahinarangi, and just improve the signage if there was some to improve, or place signage, and just you know, be available so people can contact us. And we've assisted at the pool burn with some stuff on rocks and things like that. So we're reaching out to those communities when they need us and helping where we can. So yeah.
Okay. Probably another dumb question. I saw on the signage, that cool video you just showed, it said avoid alcohol. Are there any consistent legislation for driving a boat as there is with driving a car?
No, there's no legislation on it. There is in the commercial world, Maritime New Zealand, but from our point of view, it's an educational piece. The standards, safer boat messaging across the country is to avoid alcohol, but we still have no tools to actually enforce against it. So, you know, you could be driving your boat and have an incident. You'll see if Maritime New Zealand come to the table and they'll prosecute you for dangerous navigation. They won't actually prosecute for being drunk in charge of a vessel. So yeah, it's a national thing. And at the national level, the harbour masters meetings and stuff like that, we're always, when we get the chance to have the director of Maritime New Zealand in front of us, that's something as a group of professionals, we're always pushing to raise the goalposts a little bit, you know, give us some tools to deal with that if we can. But yeah, it's very slow compared to my previous life, to be fair.
Well, and whether it needs to be ramped up by governance. Again, there's
Yes.
opportunities for us to be looking at leadership roles. Thank you.
So thanks. So next steps, we'll be coming to council for approval to review or not here at the end of November, a couple of weeks' time. And then the draft bylaw will go to Maritime New Zealand and the Harbour Master National Bylaw team for reviews, and then back to council to notify for public consultation. And then sometime not too distant in the new year, hearing panels and decision to adopt and hear a panel decisions or not, as the case may be. So it's a pretty short timeline in that regard, but pretty achievable, I think. And then the last picture was boat number 2. This boat sits down here in Dunedin. It's a more seaworthy boat, so it's really useful from that point of view. We use it for a number of interactions, anything required from Port Otago, lots of security stuff with the protesters and that, and any other thing we need this end of the world, really. Again, on a trailer, so it's good at the Taieri Mouth Bar. Yeah, so that's my last slide. Open to questions.
Thank you very much, Steve. Any queries, questions? Let's got one. Sorry, Gary. Let's got one with regards to the outcome of the court decision, Port Otago, about the ability to basically maintain navigational lights, etc., ongoing. Does that have any impact on our bylaw review process at all? But it's totally RMA related. So the bylaw is totally related in terms of maritime activity on the water Right, so there's no overlap, there's nothing that needs to be updated.
No, no overlap on that at all.
And we'll just pass to, and don't you know, just gonna say,
No, Steve got it 100% right.
there we go. Well done, Steve.
Thank you.
Gary.
Thanks, Steve. The whole harbour master function that you operate under, like it has always appeared to me to be a very lean team. And that there's 3 years, you're covering a big area. And then when we looked at, we visited your warehouse in the previous term, and you sparked my interest in just around with our new building, that it didn't work for the harbour master function to be operating out of a new building. It needed to be closer to the water. But how do we compare to other regions around New Zealand with accessibility to the water, how we've structured the whole function, the ability to operate rapidly? Because I mean, the day that we went down there, you showed us the ramp, how you have to function. If that's on a busy day, you could arrive there, basically there's a queue of boats. Now, is there, are we behind the curve for the 8 Ball, or are we ahead of it? Would it be unreasonable to have a purpose-built structure or a site that was direct on the water for Coast Guard and Harbour Master?
Okay.
Now, would that be elaborate? Would that be actually just accepted? Sorry.
I'll try and answer all of that. So I think location-wise, we're not too bad off. We can get to the water reasonably quickly. However, and I think a number of organisations are in a similar position to us, although there are 1 or 2 that are based on water, like Auckland, so it's instant access for them. So I'm not too uncomfortable with the location at the moment. The equipment, the 24-hour sort of, requirement, and the boats are never going to fit in the new setup at the new place. So we were always going to stay where we were. So that's not too bad. In regard to joint, if Coast Guard, I know Coast Guard are looking for a new building, a new location. In an ideal world, I'd say yes, if that was if we were co-located there and that building was built specifically for both Coast Guard and Harbour Master function with access to boat ramps right alongside, of course you're going to say yes to that any day, all day long, but it's a collaboration that could be undertaken as a council thing. But don't get me wrong, I think we're in a pretty good space. And numbers wise, you're right, there's just 3 of us. It's a huge area. Part of the external review by the Port and Harbour and Reef Safe Go panel suggested we probably could do more with more people. So that was part of one of the recommendations. But it depends how much we want to deliver at the end of the day. Yeah. In an ideal world, there are lots of people. Some people are carrying 6, some people are carrying 12 people, some people are operating with 2 or 3 like we are. It's a case of, you've got 3 people, we deliver as much as we can into arena. If I had more, yes, I could do more.
Sorry, can I just
continue? Cover all of that.
We're just around, the staffing one, totally hear that. But the site one of Coast Guard are actively looking for a site.
Yep.
And then what you're saying to us in a very diplomatic manner is that, it would be nice to be able to be sort of involved with that, say. But what I would hate to think was that actually there would be a very strong possibility, or it would make perfect sense that our functionality would be far better, we'd be far more reactive, we would be in a better space if we suddenly learnt that Coast Guard had found a site, set up a purposely structured functional building, and we missed out on that opportunity. Are you saying to us that actively we should be looking to engage with Coast Guard and signal, is there opportunities there, or be undiplomatic?
Joe may jump in here.
I might. So I don't think there's been anything formal at all in that space, and if anything does come up, or are there opportunities to engage with it, working with Tammy's team around that, and look if anything needed to be brought up to this table. Certainly the team is happy at Halsey Street. There would be an ideal outcome, but it hasn't gone beyond the initial thoughts of they're looking, what might this look like? So certainly if that progresses, we will engage as we need to, work with Tammy's team and bring anything to this table as appropriate to ensure that we are operating in the best space, but also ensuring that we are, you know, driving value for money and delivering the service we need to deliver.
Yeah, I think that's a fair comment. You know, they're not formally at the table. It is, you know, informal discussions at various levels. They'll have to come through the RMA process as well. But I don't think they'll do that without approaching us first. So we'll see how that pans out.
Can I just touches on part of Gary's question. Are we meeting our obligations under the Maritime Act, or our required obligations under the Maritime Act?
The quick answer to that is yes. You know, you've appointed harbour masters, we've got bylaws in place, we're reviewing them, we're doing everything we need to do, we're engaging at every level, and probably better than some areas, because we're quite well linked into the national arena and how other people do it, looking for best practice all the time. So I think the quick answer is yes. We're fully functional as we weren't before.
And I think Steve is being slightly modest. The team does a heck of a job, and that is the feedback that we receive in terms of our audits and from our external stakeholders in those relationships. So yeah, a little bit of modesty. Down there, the key thing to keep in mind is that with the review of the bylaw and why we're proposing that is to ensure that we continue to meet our obligations under the Maritime Transport Act and the Local Government Act by having a bylaw in place. And the papers that will come to you will reflect that. There is the requirement to review that bylaw every 5 years, and that's why we've started this process and why it's on the timeframe it is.
Thank you. Any other queries for Steve? You're all good online, Matt?
Yep,
Okay.
I'm here. Thank you.
That concludes the session with regards to all the responsibilities under the environmental delivery portfolio, as far as I know. Thanks to all the staff that presented this morning. Thanks to councillors and for the inquiring questions, etc. All good stuff. Apparently lunch has arrived, so we're a little bit early in terms of finishing off this session, so which is all good, and I'm sure you'll make the most of the time that you've picked up, about the extra hour and a half or so. So thanks very much, everyone. Cheers.
Thank you.